Well, hello and welcome to another live taping of the 4 and 3 podcast. I'm Dan Andros, managing editor of Faithwire.com. Normally joined by Goins-Phillips, but he is on vacation this week. So yours truly flying solo. We got another good batch of stories here today. We are gonna hop right into them. So let's dive right in. Here we go.
Faithwire.com.
Hello and welcome to 4 and 3, a podcast breaking down 4 of the most important stories of the day and 3 things you need to know about them, all from a Christian perspective. Today is Tuesday, June 15th, 2021. I'm Dan Andros. Coming up on the podcast today, Alberta authorities are out of control. Another pastor is arrested as his sobbing kids look on in horror. And Jon Stewarts has mocked those who dismissed the Wuhan lab leak theory as a conspiracy. So we'll have the details on that. Plus, a Christian video game creator is refusing to cave to cancel culture. And a modern day Jonah, a lobster diver, swallowed by a whale and survives to tell the story. So some incredible stories coming up. We are going to start with story number 1, north of the border in Canada. And we have pastor of Fairview Baptist Church in southeast Calgary. He's been arrested for holding services and flouting pandemic health orders, despite only 951 cases going on across the country there in Canada. And disturbing footage of Pastor Tim Stevens being hauled off in front of his children and put into a police cruiser as they looked on, just horrified, sobbing uncontrollably. That video circulated on the internet yesterday. It was originally produced by Rebel News, were the ones that first covered it. And so you can hear the officer in there say, "You had a gathering on June 6th, so that's why you're under arrest." And you can hear one of the kids saying, "Goodbye, Daddy," in the background. And here's the moment. You can hear that as they're being taken away in front of the children there. So here it is.
Bye, Daddy.
No other jurisdiction is imprisoning pastors in public.
I'm not going to speak to that, okay?
In Canada.
Okay.
It's only Alberta.
I would say continue the course that you're continuing on. Push further ahead, push harder if you need to, and that's all.
How much harder can we push here?
I don't know how far
Will
you've
you
gone.
arrest me and take me away from them too?
I have no reason to arrest you, right? So I'm going to leave it at that, okay?
Bye, Daddy.
Bye, guys. We're gonna move, okay? Not too close, not too close.
So that's the pastor there as he's being carted away in the SUV there, the police, and you hear the kids crying on. His wife, the officer's like, "Well, you can push as hard as you need to," and the wife is saying, "Well, how much harder can we push? You're going to take me away from my kids as well?" And so just a disturbing scene there. And so despite the shockingly low numbers, these arrests are happening. Only 951 COVID cases in the entire country, as I mentioned, and there's 37 million people there, and so it's an extremely low number. As we all remember, we've covered here on Faithwire, Pastor James Coates and Pastor Artur Pawlowski are other 2 high-profile arrests there in Canada. And apparently the arrest was put into motion by, quote, repeated calls from concerned citizens regarding church services. So hard to know if that's actually true or not. That's just what the police are saying, that they're getting these calls from people concerned about church services. That's giving them the impetus to then show up and arrest these pastors. So, and it seems to be happening in Alberta. Primarily, as opposed to some of the other provinces there. So what's the left saying? Well, the left and right, as we've talked about on this podcast, have been divided on this. The left generally just saying that churches should just follow the rules like everyone else. And what's the right saying? Well, the right is countering that politicians haven't followed their own rules, that sporting events are getting back to normal. You can shop at Walmart. You can go to other places and be out and about. And so why are churches getting singled out? And the right's also a little more concerned about the slippery slope and how it relates to freedom. So why does it matter? Well, it matters because our right to worship freely is a foundational principle that make America into the freest, most prosperous land in the world. And so what we're seeing north of the border in Canada should be a warning. Do we really want to be like Canada, where they're dragging pastors out of their homes for the crime of holding a service on June 6th? And this is what can happen when you even cede an inch of freedom. Remember, this all started, the regulations and everything else started with, well, let's not overwhelm the hospitals. That was the impetus for all of the overreaches and the government restrictions then. And people went along with that because we didn't know what we were facing exactly with coronavirus. But that quickly, the goalposts changed, and you don't hear anything about hospitals now and them overwhelming. It's just numbers. And with Canada, they're just plummeting with numbers. So it's even crazier up there as to why they're still cracking down like this. So our prayers definitely with that church and that pastor there in Canada. So let's head on in to story number 2. And here we have Jon Stewart, and he stunned audiences there when he made an appearance on The Late Show with Stephen Colbert, his old partner who used to be on The Daily Show with him many years ago. But he unleashed a rant about the Wuhan lab leak theory, and he started out by sounding sort of gracious. He said, we owe a great debt of gratitude to science. And he initially praised their work in helping to stem the pandemic, but the praise was short-lived, as he then added, they helped ease the suffering of this pandemic, science that is, and he said, which was more than likely a pandemic that was caused by science. And that left Colbert and everybody else a little stunned, and then he went on to talk about the Wuhan lab leak theory. And so here's a portion of that rant.
What do you mean by that? Do you mean like perhaps there's a chance that this was created in a lab, there's an investigation?
A chance?
Well, but
oh my
if there was
God.
evidence, I'd love to hear it.
There's
I just don't know.
a novel respiratory coronavirus overtaking Wuhan, China. What do we do? Oh, you know who we could ask? The Wuhan novel respiratory coronavirus lab. The disease is the same name as the lab. That's just a little too weird, don't you think? And then they ask those scientists, they're like, how did this, so wait a minute, you work at the Wuhan respiratory coronavirus lab. How did this happen? And they're like, a pangolin kissed a turtle. And you're like, no, the name of your lab, if you look at the name, let me see your business card. Show me your business card. Oh, I work at the coronavirus lab in Wuhan. Oh, because there's a coronavirus loose in Wuhan. How did that happen? Maybe a bat flew into the cloaca of a turkey and then it sneezed into my chili and now we all have coronavirus.
So there was just part of this rant that left the audience there was laughing, and he went to compare the situation to a massive chocolate outbreak happening near Hershey, PA, and people wondering where it came from, and kind of had some couple funny explanations that were not even close to true. And then he colorfully pointed out the obvious: maybe it came from the chocolate factory. So a very interesting rant there. One that probably would have got him banned on social media if he would have done it last year. And so what's the left saying about it? Well, they're kind of perplexed, as many of them have bought into this narrative that was pitched by the mainstream media last year that we covered on this podcast, that they dismissed any mention of a possible lab leak, even accidental, as a conspiracy theory and fringe right wing. And that was sort of the tone that was taken from the New York Times, the Washington Post, others saying, oh, this has been debunked, and when it really hadn't. And it's also very logical, as you could hear Stewart point out there, possible reason and for the outbreak of the virus. And so, but yet these people on the left are still clinging to that. And so you had a lot of them criticizing Stewart. One kind of summed up a lot of the comments with this one. He said, seeing Jon Stewart peddle the COVID came from a lab theory as obvious fact on Colbert tonight is not something I was expecting. And considering we still don't know what happened and how COVID started, it seems irresponsible to treat such things as irrefutable fact and mock those who disagree, especially when it could escalate the unfortunate trend of violence against Asian Americans. So that was what you'd hear a lot of on the left, was the right saying, well, they're mostly just kind of laughing along with it and, you know, finally getting a chance to laugh along with Stewart as someone who is a writer in mainstream news for a while and often having Stewart, you know, be the butt of his joke there. And so, he's a funny guy. And so, you know, even if you disagree with his political opinions, it's obvious that he's funny. And I think it's made more obvious by the fact when you watch this replacement who isn't quite as funny in that same role, and you see Stewart out in even just a segment like this, and he's got that ability, obviously. So the right sort of just kind of going along and saying, well, you know, good to have someone on the same side for once on this. So why does it matter? Well, it matters because, you know, we've got to find out where this virus actually originated from, and, you know, in order to better defend, you know, and potentially, you know, combat one in the future, we actually have to know what happened, and we don't know right now. And the original theory was that it just came from a bat, and we were supposed to just take that. As I mentioned, you got banned, you got, you know, warnings on Facebook and everything else if you called it, if you even brought up the possibility of a lab leak. And, you know, who knows? We don't know at this point. It could be one or the other. There's just been no concrete evidence either way. But the circumstantial evidence around it being a lab leak, as Stewart pointed out, in a very, you know, funny way, and just made it obvious that it's certainly plausible. I mean, it makes sense. And so, you know, we have to be open to the truth as Christians, no matter what that truth is. And so it seems like a lot of people right now are just wanting to shut down anything that they think is that they don't want to consider. So just a reminder that we need to just consider all the options here, and keep holding these media outlets accountable that want to put themselves forward as fact checkers when a lot of times they end up being wrong, and then they just move on like nothing happened. Well, you know, they don't let anybody else do that. You get banned, demonetized, and all these and all the other consequences that come along with that. So you got to stand up, got to speak out on these things. Can't just lay down, because again, it's going to be an Orwellian world if we keep accepting these positions that the media takes and presents as facts. So, all right, let's head in to story number 3, and let's see here if I can get that right. There we go. Scott Cawthon, the creator of the popular video game Five Nights at Freddy's, is refusing to back down after people searched for his name on Open Secrets and doxed him for donating to Donald Trump and other Republicans. Cawthon's donations and political views became the subject of fodder for gaming site Game Rant, which highlighted the fact that fans of the video game series are, quote, concerned and hurt to find out where the money Cawthon makes from the popular game series is going. In their piece, they paint having conservative views as some sort of a moral deficiency, writing, fans who searched for Cawthon on Open Secrets, an index of public political contributions, noticed that the developer had made significant monetary contributions to a number of conservative politicians, such as Mitch McConnell and President Donald Trump. With the huge popularity of Five Nights at Freddy's, a significant portion of the fan base have taken to social media to voice disappointment with those donations. And as a result, they've been trending topics, et cetera, et cetera. And so it sounds like this big nefarious thing that he just donated to some Republicans. But he didn't back down. And so despite being a trend on social media for something he probably thought he'd never be trending on, didn't want to be trending for, didn't asked for, didn't speak out about his views. Somebody just looked up open secrets. He said he's not going to apologize for his views, and he doubled down. He said, I'm a Republican. I'm a Christian. I'm pro-life. I believe in God. I also believe in equality and in science and in common sense. Despite what some may say, all of those things can go together. That's not an apology or a promise to change. It's the way it's always been. If I get canceled, then I get canceled. I don't do this for money. I do it because I enjoy it. If people think I'm doing more harm than good now, then maybe it's better that I get canceled and retire. I'd accept that. I've had a fulfilling career. Besides, most things that people can take from you are things that never had much value to begin with. So what's the left and the right saying? Well, the left has sort of been, we've talked about cancel culture, and this has been a trend now to just silence anyone who disagrees. The right's generally been opposed to that. And so why does it matter? It matters because, again, we're seeing more and more of this division, more and more of this hate. Ironically, oftentimes coming from the same people with those hate has no home here signs for someone simply disagreeing, with who they think the best politicians are, or the best policies for the country. They go ahead and want to cancel them for that. And this is the result of identity politics. The rhetoric has become so hyperbolic that people have bought in. They literally think that every single policy is an actual matter of life and death, and that if you have a different view, it means you want to destroy the planet or see the world end or be racist or something of that nature. And it's just a disingenuous debate we've got going on. And so for Christians, though, how we handle that, politics, just shouldn't have that high of a place in the Christian's life. Yes, it's important, but we have to remember that no kingdoms rise or fall apart from God's hand and his sovereign will. So we do what we're commanded to do. We pick the things that we think represent God's values the best. But then we just keep calm and carry on because it's not in our hands. It's in God's hands. So, but thankful for this man here and standing up for his faith and not backing down when people just want to cancel him for having certain political views. Totally uncalled for, but again, good for him for standing up, because a lot of people cave and they fall down and just bow down to the pressure of the mob, which is not an easy thing. When you're trending on social media and everyone's, having their opinion about you. So good for him for standing up. So story number 4. And this one is, and I don't have that up there. Okay. Can't get the right banner. Anyway, for everybody watching on the stream, sorry, the banner's going to be wrong. But this story has caused quite a stir. If you've ever seen the size of a humpback whale, then you're aware of the plausibility of the biblical account of Jonah, who of course refuses to go to Nineveh and tries to flee in the opposite direction, only to be tossed overboard and swallowed up by a whale, and remaining there for 3 days before being finally spit back out after he's repented of his decision to try to avoid, God's call for him. So, but lobster diver Michael Packard, he can now speak to the veracity of that story as well, after a biblical encounter with a whale that he thought for sure that he was a goner, that he would not survive it. So, here is what happened. According to the Cape Cod Times, Packard went off into the water for his second dive of the day, only to have his efforts thwarted by a massive humpback whale. Packard spoke to the paper, and he said in something truly biblical, he was swallowed basically whole by a humpback whale. He said, all of a sudden I felt this huge shove, and the next thing I knew, it was completely black. And so he said, I could sense that I was moving. I could feel the whale squeezing with the muscles in his mouth. And he said initially he thought he was inside a great white shark, but he couldn't feel any teeth and he hadn't suffered any obvious wounds. And so it dawned on him that he'd been swallowed up by a whale. He said, I was completely inside. It was completely black. And he said, I thought to myself, there's no way I'm getting out of here. I'm done. I'm dead. All I could think about was my boys. They're 12 and 15 years old. And it was only when he began struggling that the whale started to become uncomfortable and started shaking its head. And he said, I saw the light, and he started throwing his head side to side. And the next thing I knew, I was outside in the water. And experts believe and he survived it. And so the experts, they believe that the whale wasn't not like a shark, like seeing something and trying to eat it, that he was, whales kind of just open up and swoop around and get the smaller fish. And so they think he was just sort of accidentally caught in the middle of that, certainly the wrong time, wrong place. And so miraculously survived it. So obviously not a left-right issue here. But one that to me, I love seeing stuff like this, particularly because he survived, not if he died. But because so many people take the Bible as just like a story. Well, I mean, that's crazy talk. Somebody couldn't have gone inside of a belly of a whale for a few days. And so, stories like this kind of remind us that, yeah, whales are huge. Stuff like this can actually happen. And of course, when God wants to make something happen, he can make anything happen. I mean, we can't forget that he created the world and the universe with just mere words, which always blows my mind. Just he said it and there it was. That's how powerful he is. So when people they mock talking snakes and Noah's Ark and Jonah in the belly of a whale, just remember who God is, and that with him, of course, anything is possible. So good reminder there. Glad that fisherman is okay and lived to tell his story. So that is all the time we have for this episode of 4 and 3. And as always, head on over to faithwire.com and cbnnews.com for more news from a Christian perspective. God bless. See you back here tomorrow. Okay. All clear from the actual podcast. Still streaming. One of my things disappeared in the middle of the podcast. I don't know how. So the little banners down here, story 4, modern day Jonah, one of them disappeared. So that kind of threw me off. I don't know how it disappeared, but I'll have to get to the bottom of that.